this is my ecological framework model that I've been working on this week. It is pertaining to salt marshes. The political and economic conditions, as well as you can see the large-scale biogeochemical conditions. This is a Venn diagram that I chose to do. You can see that there's both social ecological systems as well as ecosystem services. The first circle that we'll talk about is the social processes. The first bullet is salt marsh demography. This is the salt marshes are coastal wetlands that are flooded and drained by salt water brought in by the tides. Salt marshes occur worldwide, particularly in middle to high latitudes, thriving along protected shorelines. They are a common habitat in estuaries, and in the U.S., salt marshes can be found on every coast. About half of the nation's salt marshes are located along the Gulf Coast. I live in a small town on the coastal side of the United States, on the eastern coast, and those are the salt marshes that I'll be talking about. It is considered the salt marshes of Buzzards Bay and of New England. The salt marsh activity is the salt marshes also protect shorelines from erosion by buffering wave action and trapping sediments. They reduce flooding by slowing and absorbing rainwater and protect water quality by filtering runoff and by metabolizing excess nutrients. The remote sensing and on-ground techniques is to monitor and understand the nature of these and other changes in salt marsh ecosystems. Remote sensing can play a critical role, allowing for a synoptic scale perspective and the ability to monitor short and long-term change. Models developed locally for remote sensing data can be extended broadly across salt marsh systems to assess marsh condition, observe change, and predict the future trajectory of coastal salt marsh environments. Other on-ground techniques, constructing dikes to isolate an area and pumping in sediment, planting new native vegetation, or creating river diversions. The human components, these are the associations that's been helping to recreate and make the salt marshes grow back and the restoration process of the salt marshes. This is the fishermen, the boatmen, the farmers, the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and the Westport's Fishermen Association. The Marine Biological Laboratory Ecosystem Center is also a center located near us that plays a vital factor in the research and development of the salt marshes over time. In the middle, you can see how they both are together, the integration. You can see that the Salt Marsh Restoration Plan. This is potential salt marsh restoration sites, which can be identified through the development of a salt marsh restoration plan. Cumulative impacts to salt marshes over time have harmed both marine and estuarine ecosystems, as well as individual salt marshes. The purpose of preparing a SMRP is to identify how salt marsh restoration might help address some of the effects of cumulative salt marsh loss, such as a decline in water quality, loss of flood storage, and decreased habitat for wildlife, fish, and shellfish throughout the ecosystem. The assertion is the beneficial components from the social processes and the ecological processes leading to the restoration and growth of salt marshes, and the habitat is essential for healthy fisheries, coastal lines, and communities, and they are an integral part of our economy and culture. They also provide essential food, refugee, or nursery habitat for more than 75% of fisheries species, including shrimp, blue crab, and many finfish. The ecological processes is that they do absorb large quantities of the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it, thus decreasing the effects of global warming. The salt marshes reduce oxidized nitrogenous compounds to ammonium and paniculate nitrogen and export these reduced forms to coastal waters. The dominant feature in the cycling of phosphorus in the salt marsh ecosystem is when it removes the phosphorus from sediments and releases it back into the water through bacterial degradation of the dead plant. It is also a habitat for many species, and it decreased in size over time. So the salt marshes have lost a significant amount of their size over time, especially as apparent in the Westport River. The ecological components is water, air, nutrients, and living organisms. The salt marshes do require water, and it does require air in order to recreate the photosynthesis and to continue to keep on growing. The nutrients do go through a cycle, like we talked about, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and it is also home to many living organisms. The soil of the salt marshes is sediments, mud, and peat. And the atmosphere that the salt marshes need to survive in is a summer air temperature between 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and they usually undergo a rainfall yearly. With all of this being said, this is the entire framework for the salt marshes. As you can see, next is my works cited pages. They do continue on to 2 pages. I hope everybody enjoyed this framework, and thank you and have a great day.